Hi everyone, in this video we are going to create a reusable component that you can end up using on your final project, and it will hopefully save you quite a bit of time. What we're going to do is create a component that creates a select box so you can use it when you're building forms. Now I'm going to call it a drop-down component. I've heard select elements in HTML are called combo boxes or drop-down boxes. I've heard those different terms. I'm just going to call it dropdown.js. So go ahead and add a component to your sample project, add a new file, I should say, and just call it dropdown.js. Like that. Okay, go ahead and put in the boilerplate code, and then we'll get started here. We'll start with the JSX that gets returned. We're going to get rid of this div right here, and we're going to make it be a select element. So there's the opening select tag, and then the closing select tag. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put an option. You guys know by now, hopefully, that what you put inside of a select element are option elements, and those are the options that you can choose to select. So I'm just going to go ahead and add an option element like that. And I'm going to make it say choose one. I'm sure you've seen this, where the first option basically just prompts you to choose one of the other options. Okay, so here I've set the text inside of the option to say choose. I'm going to make it say choose one actually. Okay, and then hopefully you also know that these option elements can have a value attribute. So I'm going to add a value attribute right here. And for this option, we're just going to set it to an empty string like that. Okay, so here's all we've got so far. Let's go ahead and put this on our home page. We're kind of cluttering up our home page, but this is just a playground project anyways, so we can, it's a place for us to just mess around. So I'm going to try out this component by putting it on the home page. I'm going to save the changes here and then go on over to where's the home page right here, and I'll go ahead. We've got some other stuff we've been experimenting with in here. Looks like the last thing we added was a button. I'm going to add my drop down component right here, capital D drop down, and then hopefully it got imported. So here we go. Let's scroll up and find out if it imported, and it did. So I should be good to go here if I save my changes and then bounce back over to the browser. I am not seeing it here. Am I looking at the wrong one? Oh, here it is right here. Okay, so anyways, there's what we're going to do now. What we're going to do to add to this is we're going to add a prop that allows you to define the options that show up inside of this drop down or this select element here. So let's go back over to the home page here, and let's just set up some data that we have some data to work with here. So I'm going to go ahead and put this, I'll put it right here in the home page component before the actual home page function. And here's what I want you to put into the page right here. So this is going to be the data that we feed into this. So I just called this sample options, and what it's supposed to be is an array of objects where each object has a value, and we'll use that to set the value attribute of each option. And it also has a text, so that will be what gets displayed inside the text for an option. Okay, go ahead and enter this array of sample options right here, and we'll use this, we'll pass this in as a prop. So I'm going to save my changes here, and then I'm going to go back over to our drop-down component, and I'm going to define some props, or at least one prop. So I'll put in a pair of curly braces right there, and we'll call it options. Okay, and what we're going to do, and remember now that's going to be an array just like the one that I just showed you. So what we'll do with that is use the map function to map through those options and create an option element for each one of those objects in the array here. So right there under our choose one option, we're going to go ahead and bust into JavaScript. So I'll put the curly braces right there, and we're going to take those options, the prop, and we're going to call the map method on it. And what we're going to do is, so there I set up the map method, and then I'll give it a parameter OPT, that's short for option. And then here's my arrow function. And what we're going to do is return an option element. So I'll just set this up real quickly, just like this. And then for now, I'll go ahead and I'll just put the option text so that we can see it. Now we're going to get warnings when we run this in just a second here, but so that's going to display the text, and I think we will see some warnings here. Before I actually test this out, I need to go back over to the home page and pass in these sample options as our prop. So here's the data that we're going to feed into it. I'm going to scroll back down to our drop down, and now we've got a new prop called options, and I'm going to pass in our sample options array for that. Save it and then reload the page. I didn't see any warnings, which is strange, but anyways, there we go. There's is the text that's showing through for each one of those option objects. Okay, and now what we're going to do is go back to the drop down. And we should, whenever we use map to create elements, we should add a key. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add a key attribute here, set that equal to a pair of curly braces. And for that, we can go ahead and use the option value. So I'll type in opt.value, and then we've got a unique key. And then the other thing that I want to do is actually set the value attribute here as well. So we're going to set it to the same thing. So we want to set the value attribute equal to a pair of curly braces, and then opt dot value again. Okay, so this is getting to be a long line of code here, but there's the whole thing right there, and you got to pay real close attention to the syntax because there's lots of curly braces and all that stuff here. But if I go ahead and save this and then reload the page in the browser, here it is. It looks the same as it did before, but I'm going to hit F12 here, and then I'm going to inspect this. Oh, it looks like, okay, so these are some warnings from before. That was before I added the key here. But if I inspect this element like that, you can see here it is. Here's the select. Hopefully you can see that. And there is our value attribute. And then we have the text inside the option, and then here's the second option. The value attribute is set there, and then the text, we see that there. Okay, so now you might be wondering how we're going to make use of that, and I'm going to show you. But first, we're going to add another prop. So I'm going to go back over to my drop-down component, and we're going to add another prop right here. This is going to be a function that gets triggered when one of the options gets selected. So I'm going to call it onOptionSelected. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to go to the opening select tag right here, and we're going to listen for onChange events like that. Set that equal to a pair of curly braces, and we're going to and this is what we're going to do here. Now there's a few different ways I could do this. I could create a named function here, but I think I'm just going to use an anonymous function right here. So here I'm going to set this up as an anonymous function where we take the event object, and then we're going to call the prop on option selected, and we're going to pass in the value of the target here. So we're going to go ebt.target.value. That's going to be the parameter that we pass into that on option selected prop, just like that. Okay, so there you have it. I don't think I have any errors here. Okay, so now I'm going to go back over to the home page. I'm going to save this, and I'm going to go back over to the home page, and let's go ahead and define a prop here. So remember, we can add an on option selected right here. And then let's just do this. Let's use a named function here. So let's call it handle sample option selected. Okay, that's a big long name, but hopefully you can type it all in. Handle sample option selected. Okay, so I'm going to copy this, and we need to define this function. I'll scroll up to right before the return statement, and I guess I'll define it as an arrow function. So I'll go const handle sample option selected equals an arrow function, just like this. And now remember what we passed in as a parameter back in the drop down was the value of the selected option. So right here, what I can do is, let's see, we'll add a parameter here that represents the value that was selected. So I'll just call it selected value. And then just to make things real easy here, I'm just going to console log the selected value right here. So I'm going to go console log, and then I'll go value, whoops, selected, like that. And then got the IntelliSense is in my way here. Okay, so all we're doing is console logging the parameter here, but this will be enough to give you an idea of how this is going to work right here. So I'm going to go ahead and save the changes here and clear the console log. And now right there, when I choose an option, there we go. The parent, the home page knows which one got selected because we're passing in the value. So here, if I select the other option, we can see that it says that its value selected is 2. So that's really the basics of this component. But there's a few more things I want to show you is how are we going to use this in a real project. So I'm going to give you some sample data, and this is sample data that we'll be seeing in the final project. And I'm going to show you how you can use it with this drop-down component. Let's go back over to VS Code here into our homepage component, and let's just paste in another array here. Here you go. And I think I'm going to give you this data so that you don't have to type it. But here we go. Here's an array. Now, if you've already started looking at the data that we're using for the final project, one of the collections is a collection of artists, and each artist has a name and an ID. Okay. But what we need to do is, in order for it to work with our drop-down component, we need to give it an array that has a value and a text, objects that each have a value and a text. So now we can do this with the map function. So right here, now there's a few different ways we could do this. Let's go ahead and declare a constant, and we'll call it like artist options, like that. And then we'll map through the artists array. Hopefully you guys will be able to understand all this code right here. And then I'll just call that artist like that. There's our arrow function, and what we're going to return is an object. Now I have to actually put parentheses right here because if we're going to return an object, we have to put parentheses around it. Now that's a little bit tricky thing. It has to do with the implied implicit return value of an arrow function. But anyways, go ahead and type it in like that. So artist, fat arrow, pair of parentheses, and then a pair of curly braces inside of there. And what we're going to return is an object that has a value. And we're going to set that equal to the artist ID, artist.id. And then we're also going to add a text property and set that equal to the artist name, like that. Okay, so what we're doing is we're transforming this array. We're using the map method to get it into this format where the elements have a value and a text, because that's what our drop-down component wants. Okay, so here I should be able to, I'm going to go ahead and add another drop-down. So I'm going to scroll down here. And I'm going to go right here. I'm going to put, I'll put it right here, another drop down like this. And then for the options, this time we'll add the artist options like that. And then I'll close the tag like that. Let's see if this worked. Now I didn't add the other prop yet. We can do that in a second here. So go ahead and save that. No errors so far. There we go. Here now you can see that what we've done is it's displaying our artists in the dropdown. Okay, so now this is going to be a component that you can reuse in your final project, and it'll come in handy in a lot of places. You just have to know how to map the data to get it into the right format for your drop-down component. Okay, let's just finish this off real quick with, we'll go ahead and add the other parameter. So on option selected, I said parameter, I should have said prop. In the last drop-down instance, we used a named function. For this one, let's not use a named one, let's use an anonymous function. So I'm going to put in an arrow function like that. Okay, and we know that when this gets triggered by our component, when it calls this function, it's going to pass in the selected value. So here I want to, I'll just use the name value. We could call that whatever we want. I think in our other example, when we wrote this function, handle sample option selected, we called it selected value. I'll just call it value right here. And here I'll go ahead and just console log it. And then I'll just make it say artist ID. Whoops, get that out of the way. God darn, artist. Sorry, the IntelliSense is getting in my way here. We'll go ahead and console log the value. Okay. All right, so anyways, in the first instance of our dropdown, we used a named function and we defined that function up above. In the second instance of our dropdown, I just used an anonymous function. It basically does the same thing. It's just going to console log the value that got selected. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save that. Go back over to the browser and clear the log. And now here, now AC/DC, that's their ID is 1, and then the Beatles, that ID is 2, so I'm seeing a 2. So this is a great example of component-based design, and we can reuse this component. All we have to do is map the data so that it gets the data in the format that it wants. Now there is one final thing we need to do here. It might be that I'm going to go ahead and refresh this here just so it goes back to the default settings here. So by default, it goes to choose one. But there may be scenarios where when you're loading data into your dropdown that you might want it to default to, maybe one of the options being selected. So we're going to add that functionality right now. So to do that, we're going to add another prop. So I'm going to go back over to VS Code here, go back to our dropdown component, and we're going to add another prop, and I guess we could call this default or selected value. I'll call it select. Let's call it selected value. Okay, that's so here. If you pass this prop in, that means that that's the value of the option that you want to be selected by default. Okay, now this is a little bit tricky. I had to fiddle with this a little bit. But in order to get one of these options here that we're generating to be the selected one, you have to add a selected attribute. So here I'm gonna, now this is a big long line of code, and there's probably a good way to break this up into something smaller. Maybe what I'll do, I don't know if I like this, but I'm just gonna break it up like this for now. I'm gonna put each attribute for the option on its own line. Yeah, I don't know if I really like that. But anyways, and then there's the closing option element. Okay, not great, but that's what we have right now. So what I want to do is go here to inside the opening option tag, and I'm going to add another attribute. So right under the value, I'm going to add a selected attribute. And now if we set that equal to true, then that means that this option will be selected. So what I'm going to do here is do selected equals a pair of curly braces, and what we want to do is find out if that prop, the selected value, if that's double equal to, actually I should use triple equal to the value of this option. So opt.value. Just like that. Now this will return, this is a Boolean expression. It's either going to set the selected attribute to true or false. Okay. Now I did run into a scenario where things got a little bit messy here. Let's just test this out and see if this works. I don't know if it's going to work or not. We might have to add the other tweak that I was just talking about. But here's how this is going to work. Go ahead and save your changes here. And then let's go to the home page and let's add this prop. So we'll go to our first drop down. So we'll do selected value, and I think let's just set it to a 2 like that. Okay. And so what that means that we want that second option to be selected by default. Now I'm not sure if this is going to work here. It did work. All right, so that's interesting. That worked. Warning, use the default value or value on select instead of setting the selected option. Okay, I'm going to ignore this warning because I tried to do what they're encouraging us to do right here, and I found on the internet there was a lot of bugs with it. So I'm just going to go ahead and ignore this warning. There's other ways that we could try to set this, but I'm going to go with what I have. All right, now the problem that I ran into is if I go back to my drop down component, and if I set this to a double equal, then you guys know that it's not comparing the data type, it's just comparing the values. We want to use triple equals because we want to be very explicit about our data types, but it's possible that this could be a string and this could be a number. For example, we passed in a 2. What happens if this is a string 2 and this is a number 2? Then we have a disconnect. So the way that I overcame this is I just converted both of these to a string right here. So we're comparing a string to a string. So to do that, you just wrap the selected value inside a string constructor like that. And then we'll do the same thing for the op.value. We'll wrap it in the constructor function for a string, and that will convert it or cast it into a string. And then we know that we're comparing a string with a string. Okay, so that was an issue that I ran into when I was working on this here. Save it. Okay, now we're going to ignore the warning. I'm just going to forget about that. So it's defaulting to our value of 2 right here, which is that other option. Let's see if it works for the other drop down here. Let's go to the home page, and we'll add another prop here for our second drop down. Selected value. Let's pass in a string 1 here like this. So that's going to be AC/DC, I believe. Okay, so let's see if AC/DC, well, did you get all that there? Let's see if AC/DC is the selected option, or that. And it looks like it is, so it looks like that's working. Okay, cool. This will be a handy component that you can reuse. And I'm guessing you might have questions about this, but this is really a component-based design right here because we've got a reusable drop-down component, and we can use it in many different places. And then the other cool thing that you can do is you can bootstrap this so that it's going to look like all of your other bootstrap stuff too, and then you don't have to bootstrap multiple select boxes. You can just bootstrap this one and reuse this drop-down component all over the place. These are discussions that we can have in class. But anyways, let me know if you have any questions about this. All right, that'll do it.